the early 20th century, the old European empires decided to spend 4 years blowing themselves up. Once they had finished, it turned out that churning much of the continent into mud and barbed wire was rather expensive, and they had no money left. This set the stage for 2 new nations to rise to power. The problem was, they couldn't exactly see eye to eye with regards to how to run things. One nation, whose symbol was a big red star, decided that things would be a great deal better if the entire country was run as if it was one massive monopolistic corporation. The other, whose symbol in contrast was a big white star, thought that it would be better if the country was made up of a huge mishmash of little authoritarian dictatorships. Naturally, to each one, the fact that the other existed was seen as a huge hardship that they simply couldn't be expected to suffer through. All of this was put on hold for a few short years, as they both joined forces to stamp on a third prospective power whose symbol was not a star of any colour, but as soon as the not-star nation was defeated, they remembered that they hated each other. Apart from by this time, the White Star Nation had developed atomic weapons that could flatten cities. The Red Star Nation developed similar weapons just a few years later, and both sides did what any sensible person would do in such a situation, and immediately started to threaten each other with them. It looked like this could lead to all-out city-flattening war when the northern half of another country decided that it wanted to join the Red Star Nation, while the southern half called the White Star Nation for help. Supported by the full might of the Red Star and White Star Nation's military might, the North fought all the way south, then the South fought all the way north, and finally both North and South fought all the way to right back where they had started from, taking 3 years to go precisely nowhere. Things escalated when the Red Star Nation put a little tin ball that went beep into space, and thus proved that they were the best nation. They then topped themselves by putting a dog into space who did not come back, and a person into space who did, thus proving that they were not only the best, but also even better than that. Not to be deterred, the White Star Nation decided that none of that counted, and what really mattered was to get people in bulbous suits to bounce around on an endless grey desert. Once they did this, they proved that they were even better than the Red Star Nation, and had thus won space. Meanwhile, slightly back in time, things kicked off when the White Star Nation used a plane that couldn't be shot down to take photographs of Red Star territory that they denied they were flying over. This denial became more difficult when Red Star defenses shot down the plane that couldn't be shot down. The issue was that if a beeping ball could be flung into space, then possibly an exploding beeping ball could be flung into space, whereupon it could come back down onto a city. And the White Star Nation, who had weapons that could do this parked right outside the Red Star Nation, had reason to suspect that the Red Star Nation were about to park weapons that could do this right outside the White Star Nation. The White Star Navy did the only thing it could do, and created a blockade to stop Red Star ships from delivering the weapons. The Red Star Navy did the only thing that it could do and completely ignored the blockade. This made both sides very angry, and their leaders, who really didn't want to launch any city-destroying weapons, both had to pretend that they did want to launch city-destroying weapons to try and get their way. The White Star leader pretended harder, and the Red Star leader backed down and told the Red Star Navy to go home. Which was good, because it turned out that the Red Star Navy had actually delivered most of the weapons before the blockade even started, and the Red Star Nation had been able to launch them all along. After this all calmed down again, a small country decided that it liked the way that the Red Star Nation did things, and wanted to join the Red Star Club. The White Star Nation didn't like this at all, and spent many years, many lives, and a great deal of money completely failing to stop them. By this point, the White Star and Red Star Nations had both built enough weapons to blow up the Earth several times over. They jointly agreed that this was silly, and that blowing up the world once was quite enough, and signed a historic piece of paper saying so. People all over breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that the world was in the hands of sensible people who would only blow it up once. Shortly after this, another small country decided that it didn't like the way that the Red Star Nation did things, and wanted to leave the Red Star Club. The Red Star Nation didn't like this at all, and spent many years, many lives, and a great deal of money completely failing to stop them. At the end of all of this, the Red Star leader had decided that he was jealous of how the White Star leader was allowed to be hated by the White Star people, and thought that the Red Star Nation would be better if the Red Star people were allowed to hate the Red Star leader too. He let them, and the people of the Red Star Nation promptly said that they didn't want to be the Red Star Nation anymore, and so the Red Star Nation very suddenly ceased existing. Now knowing for certain that their way of doing things was definitely the right way, the White Star Nation declared victory and celebrated by deregulating markets until the global economy crashed.